Family is one of the key components of the church. But has the church been there for people when their family life has become a place of physical or emotional abuse? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Those who have been staying in silence. Domestic violence in the church.
Welcome to the Big E, the elephant in the room. My name is Melissa.
And I'm Jackie.
Today we will be talking about domestic violence in the church. Domestic violence has become such a true issue, not just in the community, but also in the church. And it is also a silent issue that a lot of individuals don't like to talk about because of their circumstance. We have wonderful guests to bring great insight regarding this topic. So let's first welcome these wonderful ladies. We have Yolanda Hutchison, and we also have Dr. Akita Pearson. So we're going to just jump right into it. Dr. Akita Pearson, if you can just tell us a little brief about yourself and your insight about domestic violence, and especially going in domestic violence in the church.
Well, thank you for having me on the show today. And domestic violence, of course, has been around for quite some time. And the most recent work that I've been involved in, and even looking at domestic violence, it has the term has changed over the years. So currently, intimate partner violence is a term that we use more often than domestic violence because it encompasses a little more than just the physical. When individuals look at domestic violence, they think physical, but when we look at the intimate partner aspect of it, we're looking at mental abuse, spiritual abuse, financial abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse. And so my background lends itself to being a survivor, a victor of domestic violence for many years, and now being an advocate, serving the state of Maryland for a couple of years on the Family Violence Council, and that's out of the Maryland State Ethics Committee, and an appointment by the last two governors for the state of Maryland. I also am the founder of the Howard County Coalition to Prevent Intimate Partner Violence. I'm executive member of Seas of Security, which is an entity that provides emergency housing for women, children, and men of domestic violence, as well as another initiative out of the governor's office, the Interfaith Domestic Violence Coalition, where we provide educational sessions for faith leaders and clergy and lay leaders and all of that good stuff.
So you said you're a survivor of domestic violence. So in brief, can you just tell us your story of what happened, if you don't mind, as brief as possible, about what you've experienced dealing with domestic violence and how you were able to overcome and be where you currently are today?
Well, I'll share. When we look at what a perpetrator of abuse is, that something that has not been widely shared or discussed. So when we look at domestic violence, we only think of physical abuse. So about 20 years ago, when I was in an unhealthy relationship and marriage, it wasn't that somebody was beating me to a pulp, but there was verbal abuse, financial abuse, and I wasn't aware, because the only thing that I really thought when I heard domestic violence was that it was a physical issue. And when we look at what perpetrators of abuse do, it is a choice. A person can have dual diagnosis, but it is a choice. And they select their victim and learn everything about them so they can actually control. It's all about power and control. And that was my situation, just like any other victim. And there eventually became an incident where there was a physical incident. However, the verbal abuse and the mental abuse are the lasting scars. Mm-hmm. Right. And oftentimes, because that did not happen in my situation, often And I initially didn't think that I was in an abusive relationship until it became physical. And all along, being ignorant to the fact, I stayed in that relationship too long. Coming out of that relationship, because I am a writer, I had an opportunity to just write my feelings and write my thoughts down. And even though I was out of that situation, I still needed healing. And the Lord blessed me to be a part of a church that had a ministry called Celebrate Recovery. And oftentimes when individuals think of the word recovery, you have to have been on drugs or alcohol. But the fact of the matter is, anyone who does not have that intimate relationship with Christ is in recovery. We're all in recovery of something. It could be overeating, the fear of failure, wanting to be a perfectionist. And I learned that, and I went through that program, and it was absolutely life changing. Looking at the aspects of denial, because even though it had been years since I was in that unhealthy marriage, there was still residue. I had horrible trust issues that I wasn't aware of until I looked within myself and got all of the pride off, because I was totally ashamed, of being in that situation and not being married. And, we want that, happy ever after kind of thing. And that was not my story. And also the element of shame that comes with it. And telling your story and not being ashamed to testify to being through an unhealthy relationship and coming out on the other side and being able to share your story to help others in healing, because truly we are saved through the testimonies of others.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I truly thank you for such a testimony and just being a true advocate to men and women all over, because a lot of people just sometimes don't want to recognize and identify as not always just physical abuse. It is emotional, it is verbal, it's financial, it's actually sometimes sexual abuse that
Absolutely.
they as well. So I thank you truly to really express yourself and really become the advocate to so many that are probably in need, especially during this time of COVID-19. The numbers have completely surged over the last couple of months because of a lot of people just being confined in one area in their home. So I'm just going to jump over to Yolanda Hutchison. If you can just please give us a brief about yourself, and then I have a few questions pertaining, because of your profession. I would like to ask you some questions regarding that as well.
Sure. My name is Yolanda Hutchison. I am a social worker. I have a master's in social work from Adelphi University. I currently work in my county's child protective services, social services, and I investigate cases of domestic violence, of sexual abuse, of neglect, abuse of children, and definitely domestic violence is right up there, especially during this time. Now, I worked with children and families. That is my passion. That's what I love to do. And so, just like the doctor said, all these things, and you have, these resources that are out there. And I believe that that's what it comes down to too, as well, is like the access to resources for a lot of our families that we don't have access to it. But I believe the information in this platform here and putting the spotlight on the domestic violence is very much needed.
So you said you really have a strong attention dealing with children. So can you just please tell the audience what children really deal with in the household when they're with family members they're actually observing their family members going through abuse? What emotional, emotionally do they deal with?
Yeah, well, with children, trauma plays out in many different ways with these kids and what they witness on a day-to-day basis. When I encounter a family, it could be, let's just say, give an example, a child not going to school. I mean, I know, COVID right now, either they're physically not going or not logging on to school, and they're asking why. And when I talk to children, it's, you know, these kids, they're very worried, you know, about their home life. You know, it's not like they can go out and say, you know, this is happening, that is happening, but it spews out into many different avenues for these children. And education could be one, you know, physical ailments could be one. A kid could be complaining about having headaches on a daily basis, having stomach aches on a daily basis, and they're asking, like, why are you not going to school? Their stomach is constantly hurting. And then I get a chance to encounter the family, and then you see the many problems that these children encounter. And in domestic violence, one of the reasons why maybe a kid may not be going to school is not due to the stomach ache so much, but they're afraid to leave their parent by themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it is. They have, like, you know, a lot of kids, when they were going to school, they don't want to leave that home. They're so afraid for their parent because they see what goes on behind their four walls when that door is closed, when they come home from school. They see what goes on the weekend with their parents. And, you know, it's not necessarily that their parents are saying, don't say anything to anybody about this, but they know sometimes with interacting with their peers that some of these actions are not normal, you know. And also, even if they think, okay, this is a normal thing, they interact with some peers too as well, and they find out, like, oh, this is not going on in your household, you know. And that's how a lot of these things sometimes come out.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Dr. Keita and Ms. Yolanda, thank you so much for that insight. I learned so much in just your intro, so much. I didn't even know about the intimacy with the name change. But can you all answer this? How does one become a victim? How is it easily identified? Yolanda, you just already touched on some of these symptoms, but how does one become a victim, and how can we prevent that?
Well, I'll share. Anyone can be a victim. And the fact of the matter is that education is key. And so, and that is my calling to go into particularly faith communities, but agencies, colleges, universities, all over. I do trainings, but anyone can be a victim. And we also have to keep in mind that you have absolutely no idea that you are entering into a relationship with someone who wants to have power and control over you. And that is their choice. And what really brought this full circle for me is when I was doing trainings in the county jail. And there was a lady that was in my session, and we were going through our curriculum. And she just shared, she said, I was a child in a household where my father would physically assault my mother, verbally abusive. And as a female, and her choice of relationship was women, but she says she would pick the female that had low self-esteem. She would pick a female that did not have low self-esteem. She would pick a female that she feels as though would do exactly what she wanted them to do. And how she would do that is find everything out about that person. And she would make sure she connected with them emotionally. So by the time it gets to the point where she wants to kind of control that person as a puppet, their emotions are already there. There is love. Do not think for a moment that a person who is a victim does not love their abuser, because they do.
They say hurt people hurt people.
Exactly. So, and the thing about it is when you become intimately attached with someone and those emotions and the love is there, it's not easy to kind of break away from that. And oftentimes there are children that are involved, and finances are involved. It's all kind of factors that play a role in relationships. But anybody, back to your question, can be a victim. And it's because of the lack of education, because it does not start with someone just punching you or slapping you. It could be very simple, as in my experience. Well, oh, you look nice in that, but you would look better in this outfit. I had no idea. I'm just thinking that, hey, I value his opinion. And then, well, why do you have to go to your parents every weekend? Why don't you stay with me? Why don't you spend more time with me? Oh, you really don't need to go and be with your friends this time. You went with them last time. It's very small things that add up to the person being in control and actually the victim losing themselves.
So you just named some of the symptoms that we could look for.
Yeah,
Like you said, sometimes you're unaware because you're caught up in all these emotions and feelings. And love and lust, in my opinion, love and lust look very similar in the beginning, but lust sometimes, of course, the intentions are wrong. But love is, of course, everlasting. So that's lust is not healthy, or violence obviously is not healthy. So you have to know what the intentions of the person is.
And also education. Education is key, because I've done sessions in churches, and I remember one incident, and I was going in detail about the verbal abuse and it being a pattern, and that pattern is abuse. And one of the good sisters says, well, in my family, we argue and we curse each other out, and that is not abuse. It is abuse.
That's abuse.
And so just because you were raised in that household, and that's how it was in your household, it does not negate that it was not abuse, and that you are repeating the same thing in your household.
And you find that same thing, it was normalized for you. So of course, when you're going into another relationship, that was normal and comfortable. It's a pattern. So you find that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yolanda, you were going to say something.
Mm-hmm.
She was about to say something. That's fine.
Yolanda, you were going to say something?
Yeah.
No, I just like the doctor said, it's like I think it's about education, because a lot of the families that I talk to, they may not realize, like you said, until the end, like, wait a minute, it had to start from somewhere. Like I said, you just don't get hit one day, but you see the pattern. And with a lot of these families, when they go to counseling, they speak to someone like Dr. here, and they have the resources in place and said, okay, oh, I see, they're able to identify all the points in time where the manipulation started, the control started, control of the finances started, and even sometimes the control of children. A lot of these families, one partner could use the child as a vice and say, listen, oh, they know they're not going to leave, or they're gonna hold that against them because they know that they may not be able to see their child.
It's funny you said that, Ms. Yolanda, because I told Melissa of this incident about maybe 3 weeks ago. I met a young lady. She was a survivor of a murder-suicide type situation. And she did mention a lot of the times other family members, although they can pretty much so help you, there's but so much help they can get from their family. Her husband at the time, he attempted to kill her and the children, just like you see on TV and the news and movies. And it failed, thankfully. So they all survived the gunshots. He survived as well. But he is deceased now. And she said that just dealing with, she doesn't have any trust or any belief in her family and her friends. A lot of times you don't know how to communicate that you're going through these things. How are you supposed to say, oh, my husband's trying to kill me every night? And everybody else will say, what? Why don't you just leave? Why don't you just leave? So how do we make it, I guess, like you said, education is key. How do we build that bridge for women and men who are in abusive relationships where they just can't leave? How do we go ahead and build this bridge for our communities?
Well, there is what's called a safety plan. And so if anyone went to like any of the local centers or the national hotline, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, they will find a safety plan there, because it's not easy to leave. And based on statistics, a woman will attempt to leave 7 times before she actually leaves. However, the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of women that will never leave because they will die. When we woke up this morning, there were 3 to 6 women who will not see tomorrow because they will die at the hands of their abuser. At the close of this day, when 24 hours is over, 600 million people will be abused on this one day by their intimate partner. So a safety plan goes step by step as what a person can do. One of the key things is safety is paramount and safety is key. And it goes right back to education. So as family members, we need to know where the resources are in our community. We need to know where the safe havens are in our community. And I do not advise family members or friends to say, all right, come and I'm going to take you in. And they do not have the knowledge and they do not have the wherewith to take care of those families. You have a young lady who may have 4 or 5 kids. How long can you sustain taking care of them and taking care of your household? And at the same time, when they leave, that is the most dangerous time for that family. So are you ready to put your family and your life in harm's way? Because the fact of the matter is that abusers not only kill their victims, but they kill other people too. Yeah. So when a person shows you who they really are, you have to believe it. So a part of that safety plan is looking at safety first when the person contacts you and if they are safe. Of course, you can call 911 and the laws in different counties and states vary. So that's why it's so important to understand and know and educate yourself on what's available and the proper steps to take in your county, your city, and your state, because the laws vary significantly. And I've had women who've come from other states, and I encourage them to come from other states, to come to Maryland, because Maryland has more resources, but their laws, we have a lot of new laws that have taken place that are not available in other states. For instance, like unemployment. So in some states, they don't care. So if you have to relocate and you don't have a job, in Maryland, you get immediate unemployment. In Maryland, there are designated places where you can go and you don't have to pay a security deposit or a first month's rent. There are several shelters and new units that are being built all the time for housing, because housing is one of the number one issues why women and men, because women are not the only ones who are abused or victims, they go back because they don't want to live in their cars, they don't want to be in the streets, and they don't want to be in a homeless shelter. There are shelters that are designed specifically for women, children, and men for domestic violence, but oftentimes they are full because it's just so vast. And when we're educating ourselves in reference to assisting a victim, we must understand that listening is very important. No matter how much we want to save the person has to make the decision themselves to do what is proper for them. We can't make that decision for them. So it's very important to just educate yourself, to be a listening ear, to know the resources, to guide that person and to share the resources that are available, but you cannot make a decision for them.
So ladies, I have a quick question on this. Has the church been really a safe haven for victims? If they haven't, why? And why not haven't they been more of a safe haven for the community as well as members in the church?
I know for at my local church, my pastor said, look, this is an issue. And so he taps into the resources, meaning, the people in the congregation like myself who interact with these families on a day-to-day basis and want to have the resources available. Like I bring in like maybe pamphlets, or I identify myself as a person in my church to say, hey, if you are going through, this situation, they can tap into myself, contact the church, and have those resources available. I work at a place where it's a child advocacy center where you have, the safe housing in place. We have attorneys that are able to help with order of protections and certain things. And I'm not saying it's the end all and be all. We know that people have been killed underneath orders of protections. I get that.
Mhm.
But it just comes to just the resources. People do not know that these resources are available. There's hotels available through your local social services and things like that. But I think that a lot of our pastors, people who are leadership and over these congregations, have to tap in. They have to first recognize that there is an issue in their community. It can't be swept underneath the rug. It has to be called out for what it is. We just can't continue to turn a blind eye to domestic violence in the community because it's there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Yolanda. And one of the trainings I do is trainings that I do with my coalition is interpretation of scriptures, power and control, because there are individuals who are in pulpits that are abusers.
That's right.
So that is one of the reasons why it's not discussed in some churches.
Yeah.
And even though there are resources that can be given in some areas at no cost to churches, it's not a conversation that many people of faith want to have.
And what's the name of this? No cost? Can you say that one more time? What is no cost for church?
No, I'm saying there are resources in the community.
Oh, okay.
So like a lot of the domestic violence centers, they will come to faith communities and churches and provide free information.
That's the first thing a church would say. Well, it's not in the budget or something like that. It's not.
Well, there are
Worried about the
resources
paint
for
and the
churches
color
that they
and the
don't have to
fireworks
have that
and the-
money.
Worried about the
But it's real, and oftentimes there are pastors that use scripture to control their wives. And to control their congregants. So why some churches are not providing that is because they're not in agreement, because oftentimes they're in the pulpits, which is not good. But those who are not, it's very important that they provide education. And there's another training that I do that's titled, "Is Your Church a Safe House?" Because even if you don't feel as though you have the Miss Hutchisons in your church, you can partner with the church like Mrs. Hutchison's, and they will be able to pull the resources together to provide those kinds of services. So even though you may be small, it does not matter. You can put information in the bathrooms. You can hang them up. You can make sure that people are aware. You can have individuals to come in and present and to share the resources in the community. So I think there is no excuse. However, churches have been reluctant to allow secular to come into their pulpits, into their churches. However, I am doing my best to work with entities to break down those barriers.
Excellent.
And continue. So even though they don't want to hear, I still have their conversations, even though they won't allow us, and like the social workers and all to come in. When I see them, I still have that conversation. And I believe that in time, it may not be today, but tomorrow they may be open, or tomorrow there may no longer be a pastor there, and it may be someone else who is open. So we have to continue to spread the message, and this particular platform is phenomenal. And thank you for having this conversation.
And ladies, I was just going to ask about this question, like you're saying, a lot of churches are just not open. Because I was going to say, why don't they have like a private 911 line to some of the churches, so if there is a victim that's in need, they can call this private number, and like you said, like Ms. Hutchison, she can be the one to retrieve those calls and call these individuals back that are in need. But this is a private line that only members of the church or even outside in the community can reach out to and say, hey, this is a line that you call and it's private, and only licensed professionals will be retrieving these calls and be able to help you as needed. And I think, like you just said, Dr. Pearson, you did say, I think a lot of churches, if it's not under their doctrine or under their their platform, or if it's not an actual member of affiliate under that church, a lot of times they're not open to bring outside individuals in. But sometimes, I mean, I think in the end, we're here to help, we're here to serve. It doesn't matter, honestly, the denomination or affiliate who it is. If you can be a vessel and you're a child of God that's willing to be able to help someone in the time of need, it shouldn't matter where you're coming from. It should just be able to say, hey, we're here to help. So
absolutely. And the number one, and the reason why the faith community and the churches are so very important is because oftentimes than not, a victim's first point of contact is their faith leader, their church, or their faith community. That's the first place where they go. And if the church is not equipped, and I don't mean that they have to have a DV ministry that, provides all the nuts and bolts. They just need to know how to respond, because what happens sometimes is that they want to keep the family together. But abuse is abuse.
Yeah.
And that is not the safest place for that family to be in. And it's just very important that our faith leaders get the education. I wish that every church had a ministry, but I mean, if they had the education as how to respond, that would be a great help. How to respond. If churches knew how to respond, that would be a great help.
A lot of churches are in denial. They feel like not their members, not their affiliates, not leaders, but those are the ones that are crying out. And sometimes it's a subtle situation or a subtle behavior or something. They maybe had a conversation with someone, but they didn't really take. They're like, oh yeah, like you say, a lot of times, a lot of churches just pray about it, it'll go away, or fast and pray, or we'll just have let's have a revival, or whatever it may be. But domestic violence is real. It is here, and it's something that has to be addressed. And if we don't start doing something directly in our churches to bring awareness to our members and especially to our children that are emotionally dealing with this situation, I don't know when. You got to wake up. And I thank you, ladies, so much for being that voice and being those advocates to even help the ones that are willing to even hear you and listen and be that support and that tool. So I truly, truly thank you, ladies, for that. Jackie, do you have any follow-up or closing?
No, thank you so much for being here, and please leave your information so our viewers can get the information and the expertise that you all are sharing today.
Yes, we will be, at the end of this show, we will be sharing Dr. Akita Pearson. She wrote a book, and we would like to share that with you. And Yolanda Hutchison, we will leave some information as well once we close out the show. So we just want to again thank you everyone for listening and tuning in to the Big E, the elephant in the room, where we speak about the unspeakable.
Welcome to What's Going On? My name is Demita Joe. Each Wednesday, you can find me here at 3 p.m. I'll be over here discussing different things that are going on and try to bring you a boost of positivity for your week, because we all need this. We're going to share some feel-good stories. We might find a hometown hero. We may take a look at some trending topic. And sometimes we might even find a lesson in a not-so-warm and fuzzy story if we can. I'm Demita Joe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode right here on What's Going On?
Well, they do that there, cause we do that there. I see you talking, so we gon' take it there. And yeah, talking cheap, so don't do that there. My click 100 deep.
This is Tyron
and Nicole with your weekly RATV news break. Each Thursday at 12 noon Eastern, we'll come to you with the latest news, trends, and more with a positive spin.
We know there's a lot of positive news that doesn't get reported, but we want to give you the opportunity to share your story here on RATV. If you have a positive news story you want us to share, you can submit your story to news@re-tv.net.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Relationship Entertainment Television YouTube channel. Download the new RATV Live app on your mobile device and follow Relationship Entertainment Television on your favorite social media platform.
Don't forget, make sure you tune into the RATV News Break each Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Until then, be blessed and be great.
Hey, it's your girl Tia Robertson. I'm the host of Entrepreneur Insider. Every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern for entrepreneurs and news that you need to know about. See you there.
Growing up in the church, we saw a lot. Things that people refuse to talk about. The elephants in the room. Mental illness. Sexual abuse, broken families, domestic violence, and so much more. The Big E, The Elephant in the Room, is a show that sheds light on these topics. We're here to speak about the unspeakable.